War is expensive, especially in the Middle East. Last year's bombing campaign in Yemen cost somewhere between $3 and $5 billion, according to estimates from Harvard's Kennedy School. The June strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities cost about $2 billion. And with no clear exit strategy for what is currently happening in Iran, the costs of this war will likely dwarf anything we've seen in a long time. So it is fair to consider, as Nobel Prize-winning economist Paul Krugman has, what else could be done with that money. Paul Krugman joins me now. Really good to have you.
Good to be on.
All right, so what else could we spend that money on?
Okay, I mean, the motivating example I like is, the three jets were shot down in a friendly fire incident over Kuwait. So it's three jets. What's that? But that's about $300 million just right there. Now, it turns out that we have a lot of children in the United States have health coverage provided by the CHIP program, Children's Health Insurance Program, which costs about $3,000 per child. So just those three jets is the cost of health care for 100,000 children over the course of a year. It's the cost of food stamps for about 125,000 people for a year. So if you compare the fundamental social safety net programs, especially for children, with the cost of even a really, in the scope of war, a relatively minor incident, it's gigantic. And of course, that was a small fraction. It's quite possible. It's quite easy to imagine that Kuwait incident is going to be 1% of the total cost of this war.
Yeah, that's just three jets. It's a really enlightening example. We've also had a lot of talk in this country about how we can't afford to extend the Obamacare subsidies. It's just not in the budget. The deficit is too high. If we were not waging this war in Iran, maybe we cut back on some of the spending at the Pentagon. Could we fund that without also raising taxes?
I mean, yeah, the U.S. federal budget is immense. So any one item, even a war in the Middle East, is relatively small compared with the totals. So if you just ask, how big a share of federal expenditure is this war likely to be, it will be quite something if it is as much as 1%. So you don't want to think about it that way. But we are making all kinds of choices because we say the deficit is a problem, spending is too high. We are, in fact, there are savage cuts to food stamps and to Medicaid that are part of the Trump, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. There are all kinds of things that we're doing because people say we don't have enough money. So if we say, well, if those were concerns, well, this war is taking money that could have been used to avoid some of these things. Even extending the Obamacare subsidies would cost more than we're likely, unless this goes really pear-shaped, is more than this war is likely to cost, but it's a significant fraction. So this is compared with the other things that are priorities for America, this is a big deal.
Yeah, and Donald Trump was elected to lower costs. He was elected to focus on people at home and making their lives better. No forever wars, as he said. He argues that this is necessary. Let's talk about the price of oil. We just had a reporter on from the Strait of Hormuz talking about how difficult it is to get those shipping lanes back open, even if the U.S. wanted to send some of the Navy over there in order to escort those various vessels. What should we expect with the price of oil?
Well, the markets have the price of oil. What last I looked was up about $15 a barrel so far, which seems to me to be very modest, given that the Strait of Hormuz, everything flows through. The whole of the Middle East oil production and other stuff as well. A lot of the world's fertilizer production, I've just learned, is around there and has to flow out through the Strait of Hormuz. So closing that off for an extended period is a really, really big blow to oil supply. It's very easy to see oil going over $100 a barrel. So this is all a big, this is important. We're kind of living through the worst case scenario about a Middle East conflict right now. That said, this is not 1979, and it's not 1979 because we're just a lot less dependent on oil than we used to be. Gas mileage is way higher. We have alternative fuel sources. So it will take a lot for us to have a full-scale economic crisis out of this, but maybe that's the wrong comparison. This is going to be ugly. Prices at the pump are already up significantly, and if we look at wholesale prices for gasoline, futures markets for RBOB, they are up about 75 cents a gallon from where they were early this year. So this is not going to be pleasant.
We have alternative sources for energy, yes, but this administration has been trying to cut back on those alternative sources. They've pulled back on regulations. The auto industry has pulled back on its investment in green cars and electric cars. China is currently occupying that space. So it's kind of contradictory to start a war in the Middle East that blocks up a bunch of oil and sends the price higher when you are at the same time making Americans more reliant on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just regulations and subsidies, but the Trump administration has been trying to kill already started renewable energy projects. They just really, really hate solar and wind power. And fortunately, they've only gotten started on that. I mean, if you could say, in a way, if we're going to have a war that drives up oil and gas prices, better to have it before the renewable energy sector in America has been killed by administration hostilities.
What do you know about our strategic petroleum reserve? There's reporting that it's at its lowest level right now in 40 years.
Yeah, I haven't been following it, but clearly they haven't tried to rebuild it. There's a lot of things that you might have wanted to stock up on before starting a war. I'm less worried about strategic oil than I am about precision munitions, which apparently are running out fast. But yeah, there's only so much you can do anyway. The fact of the matter is that oil is a global market. The U.S. can't really stabilize the price, even if we were to throw a lot of our strategic reserves at it, because it's a global price. And if we reduce the pressure on U.S. imports, then the oil just goes someplace else. So the fact of the matter is you cannot really do very much to limit the rise in oil prices if you're going to take 30% of the world's oil production, which is roughly what the Gulf region does, and not close off the ways that production gets to the rest of the world.
Yeah, I just want to end on something you said, that everything's a choice. And just to remind folks that the 3 jets that were shot down in Kuwait, $300 million, that could feed 125,000 kids for a year, or 100,000 kids, get them health care for a year. And that's probably just the smallest fraction of how much this war is going to end up costing. Paul Krugman, really good to have you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Great to be on. Thank you.